l'chaim Bichlal, l'chaim Chassidim, l'chaim Anash, Tmimim. This really is an unprecedented Farbrengen. It's an unprecedented Farbrengen where we're bringing together Chassidim from across the entire world, down here in Australia, in the Southern Hemisphere, and those in the Northern Hemisphere. Some people it's late in the afternoon, some people early in the morning, and for some of us it's getting towards evening. And we're gathered here, Kipshutoi Letakis Eitza, as the Rebbe said by that Sicha. We've come to be inspired, to inspire one another in this inyan hachi gadol v'hachi ikri v'hachi pnimi, the inyan of being mekabel plei Mashiach tzidkenu b'poel mamish. The big Yisoidus this year is that it's Lamed Shana, Shleishim Shana from Tafshin Nun Aleph, from the Sicha of Chav Ches Nisan. And we know that the Rebbe would make a big shturim, a big deal about significant numbers, about round numbers, about large numbers. And the number 30 also in Chassidus is explained as having its significance as well. In Tafshin Mem, which was 30 years from the Istalkus of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe said a Sicha in Parshas Yisroi, and there the Rebbe mentions the significance of 30 years, that it's explained up in Chassidus, that it represents the idea of a Tkufa Chadasha, that it's a new faith. And the Rebbe brings the pasuk in the beginning of Sefer Yechezkel, by Hi Bishloishim Shana, that in the 30th year, V'ani B'soicha Geula, while Yechezkel Hanavi and Yidden were in Galus Bavel, there Yechezkel Hanavi has one of the greatest nevuas of the Oibershter, the Merkava, Bishloishim Shana. Chassidus explains, and the Rebbe brings from the Kitzurim Va'aris Tanya from the Tzemach Tzedek, that the number 30 represents, like the Alter Rebbe brings in Tanya, that each bechinu madrega mishalosh elu nefesh ruach u'neshama klulam eser bechinos, that the levels of nefesh, ruach, and neshama, each one has 10 midos, 10 koiches hanefesh, and therefore we have 30, which represents the totality of the nefesh, ruach, and neshama, which really represents the consciousness of the neshama. And Tzemach Tzedek is also masbir that 30 is connected to eser oiros pnimim, eser kelim, and eser oiros makifim, which l'chayra means that after 30 years from hearing that sicha, and not just that sicha, but as Rabbi Farkash mentioned, all of the sichas from Tafshin Nun Aleph, going on from Chav Ches Nisan, after 30 years, these sichas should permeate every level of our neshama, nefesh, ruach, and neshama, and all the levels of Seder, Ishtalshlus, Oidos, Pnimim, Makifim, Kelim, v'chulu, v'chulu. There's a letter sent by the Rebbe's father, Reb Leivik, to the Rebbe. The Rebbe's father would send letters to the Rebbe around Yud Aleph Nisan time, smichas to the Rebbe's Yom Uledes. And in the year Tafresh Tzadik Beis, Reb Leivik explains the significance of Shloishim, of number 30, and how that's connected to the Shleimus in Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. And as was mentioned earlier in the Farbrengen today, like the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, Ben Shloishim LeKoyach. What's Koyach, says the Rebbe's father? Koyach is Rosh Tevis Keser Chochma. And the Avoda is that when you reach Shloishim, what is the Koyach that we are able to bring from Keser and Chochma, which are in Yonim of Emunah, in Yonim of Lamayla Mitam Vadas, in Yonim of Chaya and Yechida, and we can bring it down into the Shloishim, into Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, that it should affect our Seichel, affect our Midos, and affect our Machshava Dibra Maisa. And through this will be Taka Zoicha, like it says in Pirkei Avos, HaMalchus Niknas, Bishloishim Mailos, that the attribute of Malchus, and Malchus goes on Melech HaMashiach, Malchus Beis David, is Niknas Bishloishim Mailos, and Taka should be Mekuyim. Shloishim Mailos, Shloishim Shana, we should Taka have the Malchus Niknas, the Geula in the Isgalus of Malchus Melech HaMashiach. It was mentioned already that in the beginning of that Sicha of Chav Ches Nisan, Tafshin Nun Aleph, the Rebbe spoke about the significance of the day, as the Rebbe would do in many of the Sichos, the significance of the year, the significance of the month, the significance of the day of the month, and not just Chav Ches, but Zach and Chav Tes and Lamed, all the way to Beis Iyar, and explain how all of these are connected to the inyan of Geula. They're all meramis, they're all alluding to how we are in a time which is so much connected to Geula and Mashiach, and is roy to the Isgalus of Mashiach. And the Rebbe also connects not only the day, but also the Sfira Sa'omer, that the Sfira of the particular day of Koyach Nisan, which is Yud Gimel La'omer and Yud Dalad La'omer, and so on and so forth, that these two are connected to the Indian of Geula. How so? Yud Gimel is Begematria Echad, and Echad is connected to Geula by Yemahu Yiyah Havaya Echad Ushmai Echad, that on that day the Oibershter and his name will be absolutely one. In the Ha'ara of the Sikha, the Rebbe is Mitzayin to a Sikha of the Frierdiker Rebbe, a Sikha from Achron Shal Pesach, Tov Reish Tzadik Tes. It's a Moedidika Sikha, it's a very short Sikha, and it's an unbelievable Sikha which speaks about Mashiach and speaks about the Keli that's going to bring the Izgalus of Mashiach. The Frierdiker Rebbe brings the pasuk from Birchas Yaakov Avinu that before passing away, Yaakov Avinu benches his Kinderlach, benches the Yud Beis Shvatim, not all of them, but he gives a bracha. And when benching Shevet Yehuda, he says, "Lo yasu Shevet mi Yehuda ad ki yavai Shiloi," that the staff of leadership of Malchus will not depart from the Shevet Yehuda ad ki yavai Shiloi, until Shiloi will come. And Rashi says Shiloi refers to Melech HaMashiach, Shahamelucha Shaloi, the ultimate, the truest king of Klal Yisrael. Frierdiker Rebbe points out that Shiloi, Shin Yud, Lamed Hey has the gematria Moshe, 345, and Yavoi Shiloi has the gematria of Mashiach, 358. And Moshe and Mashiach, their whole mahus, their whole being, the whole reason they come into the world is purely for Geulas Yisrael, to redeem the Jewish people. Moshe, who was the Goyal Rishon from the first Galus that we suffered, and Mashiach, who is the Goyal Achron, who will take us the Karev Mamish out of the Galus that we are in right now. But what is the difference? What is the difference between Moshe and Mashiach? What is the difference between Shiloi and Yavai? Shiloi is the word Yavai. That's the difference in Gematria. And the Gematria of Yavai is 13, which is the Gematria Echad. And that's why the Rebbe is Mitzayin to this Sikha of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that the Gematria Echad, that is the difference of transitioning, of going from Moshe, Goyal Rishon, to coming to Mashiach, the Goyal Achron. And the Frierdiker Rebbe says, as in dem Yavai, that in this word Yavai, there is a Tifer Remes, versus the Keli to Bias Mashiach. There is a deep hint, a powerful message as to what is the Keli that is going to bring us to Bias Mashiach, to Yavai Shiloi, to the Geula Shlema, and that is Yavai the Gematria Echad. Das heißt, says the Frierdiker Rebbe, mit dem was bei Yidden wird sein der Inyan ha'Achdus, that by Yidden having Achdus zusammen, that we are together, when we are united, Bichlal, ubifrat, and specifically, ahis Achdus, in dem Inyan hadibur von Mashiach, and specifically when we have not just an Achdus that we get along and that we all love each other, but there is a focused Achdus in the Inyan of Mashiach, in the dibur, in speaking about Mashiach. Men soll reden wegen Mashiach, and we should speak about Mashiach, and we should do so together. Then wird men beratzen Hashem Yisparech mamshich sein de Geula Shlema yedei Mashiach tzidkenu. That in the power of that Achdus, and an Achdus bifrat, in speaking about Mashiach together, that is the Keli to bring Yavai Shiloi. In the Hemshech, the Frierdiker Rebbe describes that when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, the Yidden in Mitzrayim, despite the fact that they were in Galus and Avodas Parech, they had a tremendous simcha inside of their hearts. Everyone was speaking about this special son who was born to Amram, Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu Nismalak Habayis Kula Eira. They all knew of the Nevuah of Miriam and Avia, that Moshe Rabbeinu would be the Goyal Yisrael. And the Yidden, their hearts were elated. They saw a future. They had a hope that there would be a Geula. And they spoke about Mashiach. They spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu. Wherever they were, whenever they met someone, they spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu. And even when Moshe Rabbeinu was taken to the house of Parai, the Yidden still spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu. Tamid, they were constantly mentioning Moshe Rabbeinu. And even when Moshe Rabbeinu disappeared, when Moshe Rabbeinu ran away to Midian, and we know according to the Medrash, Moshe Rabbeinu was away for 40 years. And the Yidden did not see Moshe Rabbeinu for 40 years. They had no correspondence. They didn't know whether he was alive or not. They still spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu. They still spoke about the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would send Moshe Rabbeinu to take them out of Mitzrayim, and it was taking the schus of that emunah that Nigalu, that they were redeemed. Moshe Rabbeinu came back and took the Yidden out of Mitzrayim. And says the Frierdiker Rebbe, V'chein b'galus ha'achrei. So too in unsere galus, tzrichim tamid ledaber al Mashiach, we have to constantly be speaking about Mashiach. And that means, if we could say, that not only when we could see Moshe Rabbeinu, not only when we could see and point Marin be'etzpoi v'oimer zeh, but afilu when it's nizalan gevarim, even when we don't see the Moshe Rabbeinu, even when we're in a choshech hagalus of avodas parech, we have to speak about Mashiach, and we have to do so together. We have to do so in a way of echad, and echad is the yavai shiloi. It's this Achdus in the dibur v'eged Mashiach that will bring Mashiach himself, and that's why this kilus, this asifa, this fabrengen is such an unbelievably powerful thing, something which we never imagined possible. That literally kipshutai, we are sitting in a way of echad. Afilu has been mentioned already, ein deyasei and Shabbos, and it's very difficult to speak about Mashiach, bifrat in the time when Moshe Rabbeinu is hidden and we don't see Moshe Rabbeinu. Nonetheless, the fact that we're here sitting together from across the world and across the spectrum and different dayas and different understandings, this itself is a gewaldige uptu, and in this chus itself we should be zeicha to the Geula. There's a famous vart from Darshanim on the Haggadah. When we say the Dayenus, Ilu keravanu lifnei Har Sinai v'loi nasan lanu es ha-Torah Dayenu. If the Oibershter would have brought us to Har Sinai and not given us the Torah Dayenu, that would have been enough for us. What's the pshat? The whole tachlis of coming to Har Sinai was to be mekabel the Torah. The Rebbe brings this kasha in the Haggadah. So if keravanu lifnei Har Sinai v'loi nasan lanu es ha-Torah, how could you say Dayenu? What's it worth? So I remember seeing a pshat once, that we know when the Yidden came to Har Sinai, Vayichan Sham Yisrael Neged Hahar, that the Yidden camped by Har Sinai, Ki Ish Echad Belev Echad. And that's what it means, Ilu Keravanu Lifnei Har Sinai. If the Oibershter would have brought us to Har Sinai, even without a Torah, the Etzem Zach that the Yidden were Ki Ish Echad Belev Echad, in a way of Achdus, Dayenu, that would have been enough. And Zichar, that certainly this Fabrengen, Ilu Keravanu, that if only the Achdus, that itself, the fact that we're sitting together, Achdus Bichlal, and it's an Achdus in speaking about Mashiach, that's chus alone, even without the Pu'ulais, and even without the Achlotas Toivas, which is certainly going to be Moisif, that Achdus itself should taka be the Keli that should bring about the Geula Mitzvah Shlema. When the Yidden left Mitzrayim, the Oibershter calls us Tzivos Hashem. In the Basi Legani Maimorim, the Maimer of this year, the Rebbe speaks about the Inyan of Tzivos Hashem is Tzva Gimel Lashonos, 3 interpretations of the word Tzava, which Kipshuta means an army. But one of the Pirushim is Tzva is Miloshin Tzivyoin. The true beauty comes when you have different stripes, when you have different colors together. Not when everyone thinks the same, not everyone is the same in their hashkafas, in their outlooks, but dafka where there is differences, dafka when we can complement one another. This one has more oiris to tayu, this one has more kelim to tikkun, dafka through that, then we have tzivyon. And we know by an army that the only way that an army can win a war, and we are all conscripted in the army. The Rebbe Rashab established an army of chassidim, kol hayotzei l'milchemes beis David, and our war, the final frontier of our shlichus, is against those asher cherfu ikvus mishichecha, those who oppose, those who fight against Geula and Mashiach, and that is to break the Golus itself. And when an army fights, the strength of the army is in its Achdus. That you can't go out with only half of the army fighting. You have to go out with everybody, all of the soldiers together, all of the Chayole Beis David, the entire Lubavitch as we have in this Fabrengen, with all of our guns blazing to fight against the Choshech HaGalus and to be poil the Geula Shlema. The Frierdiker Rebbe said, and it's brought in Sichos for the Rebbe, that when an army goes out to fight, right, fighting a war is a difficult thing, a Mesiras Nefesh. Yet an army goes out with a nigun shel march, and that army goes out with a joyous song, a lively, upbeat song, the inyan of simcha. Something which the Rebbe said is that Chassidim say that we have to live with the capital of the Rebbe each year. That the capital of the Rebbe, that's the Avoda of the year. The capital that we started saying Yud Aleph Nisan this year is not just one capital, but it's the beginning of a whole new tkufa. 15 kapitlas, all beginning with the Lashon Shir Hamalois or Shir Lamalois, the inyan of Shir, the inyan of Simcha. And we know that the Rebbe says that Simcha b'Ta'arasa is one of the ways that we are able to be poyel the Geula. The pasuk says, "Batzarasali karasi v'yaneni," that even when we face tzores, eis tzara leYaakov, even when we face tzores, which is the inyan of galus, nonetheless the avoda has to be in a way of simcha. In Tavshin Mem Beis, Shabbos Mevarchim Chodesh Adar, the Rebbe spoke a sicha about the Shir Amalos Kapitlach. It was Chav Zayin Shvat. And therefore, Chav Zayin, Yom Chav Zayin, in the Kapitlach Shir Amalis, and the Rebbe spoke about the inyan of Shir Amalis. And the idea of Shir, of course, is Simcha, and Hamalis is the idea of Aliyos, Avoda, to lift ourselves upwards. And the Rebbe quotes the Medrash. And the Medrash says, by Yaakov Avinu Vayishkav B'Mokai Mahu, when Yaakov slept that night, says the Medrash, but the 20 years that he was by Lavan, he did not sleep. Says the Medrash, Mahaya Oimer, that in these 20 years that he was by Lavan Arasha, what was Yaakov Avinu saying? It's a strange question. What was he saying? One of the opinions in the Medrash is that he was saying the Tesva of Shir Hamalasim. He was saying these 15 kapitlach of Shir Hamalis. The Rebbe is masbir that what is the question of the Medrash Mahaya Oimer? The question of the Medrash is, how could Yaakov Avinu be in Chorein Avcha Mokai? How could Yaakov Avinu be away from Eretz Yisrael? He could be in Shoel Tachtis. He could be with Tzoin Lavan, with Lavan HaRasha, Lavan HaRami Bikesh, Lakar Isakol. How could Yaakov Avinu be successful in his avoda by Lavan? And the answer is Mahaya Omer Shir Hamalos. Shir Hamalos means that the avoda has to be mitoich simcha. Taka, it's an avoda kasha. Avodim loshen ibud oiros. It's a hard, a shvera avoda. But the avoda muzayin has to be with simcha. And how could it be besimcha? The Rebbe says two things for this. Number one is bitachon. Karasi vayaneni. We have bitachon that the Oibershter is good, and the Oibershter will give us good. And number two is the inyan of Yerida l'tzoyrech Aliya. That even what looks like a Yerida, even the choshech hagolus, which is a Yerida she'ein kamoyu, the Yerida is l'tzoyrech, and therefore is a chelik of the Aliya itself. And that knowledge itself should be enough that we should have shir amalis, that we should be besimcha. Says the Rebbe Maisa Ovay Simon Labanim, that as to in our golus, our avoda will be matzliach if we have the inyan of shir. So we have to have Achdus, and Achdus of Chassidim in speaking about Mashiach, and it has to be avoda mitoich simcha. To illustrate, to bring out an idea of the power of simcha. So on Achron Shel Pesach, of course, is a yom where the Ha'aras Mashiach shines in the world. And the Haftarah of Achron Shel Pesach is the Haftarah of Yeshayahu Hanavi, which speaks about La'asid Lavai in the most powerful and vivid terms of description. But the beginning of the Haftarah, the Rebbe would say the Haftarah, Oid Hayom B'Noiv Lamoid. The beginning of the Haftarah is not about Mashiach, it's talking about Sancheriv. The Sancheriv came with a massive army. The Gemara in Sanhedrin is Masbir. He had a massive, massive army, millions of soldiers. And they came and they camped against Yerushalayim, but he camped against Yerushalayim with this powerful army. So powerful, he said, tomorrow morning when the sun rises, each one of my soldiers will pull one stone from the wall. There'll be no walls of Yerushalayim left. That day was Erev Pesach, the Zman of the Akrabas Korban Pesach. And the Yidden in Yerushalayim, behind those walls, looking out and seeing a sea of soldiers who the following morning, Rahmana litzlan, would be able to wipe them out. How were they feeling at that time? They're making hachanas for Leil HaSeder. They're bringing a carbon Pesach. They're sitting down to the Seder with their mishpachos, knowing what's going to happen in the morning. How would they feel? Morashcheira, Yush, Vasvara Seder, what would they have? We know that there was a nace that night, and a malach came and killed the generals of Sancheiriv, of Ashur, and the following morning they all fled array in disarray, and the Yidden were saved a tremendous Gevaldik nace. I saw a Malbim on the Pasuk in Tehillim, Kol Rina v'Yeshua ba'alei tzadikim. There's a Kol Rina, a sound of song, v'Yeshua, and a sound of Yeshua, of Geula. What is this referred to? So he explains as follows, that by the Yidden, when they made the Seder that night, and by the Seder we sing Hallel, thanking the Oibershter for the Nisim and Niflois, the Kimeitzeis from Eretz Mitzrayim, the Yidden sang Hallel. And they didn't sing Hallel in a defeated way, in a bitter way, in a mournful way. They sang Hallel v'ez darf zu sein with a stark Bitachon and a simcha that just as the Oibershter saved them from Mitzrayim, he would save us again from Sancheiriv as well. And says the Malbim that the more they sang with simcha, that's when the Oibershter went to fight against Malchus Ashur, and that's when the nace took place. That it was their simcha and their bitachon which was poil. The Kol Rina brought about the Yeshua. And that union of Shir Hamalos, we're moving into a tkufa where even after 30 years, where it's difficult, where there's a hell and Hester, and we don't see the Rebbe, and it's a choshech couple and mechupel, and we look around and we see a world that seems so far from Geula, the Hayra from this year and for the next 15 years, Mashiach will come long before them, is already we have to have the inyan of Shira Malos. We have to have the inyan of Shira and the inyan of Simcha. But Dibur and Shira is not enough. We have to have Maisa B'Poyel. We have to have Maisa B'Poyel. We have to have concrete action and Avoda to bring about the Geula. I came across during Pesach a fascinating sikha from the Rebbe on the Haggadah. We open up the door, we open up the door for Eliyahu Hanavi, and we pour the kois for Eliyahu Hanavi, which of course is connected to Geula and the idea of bringing in the Geula, as the Alter Rebbe brings in the Shulchan Aruch, that we open up the doors leading to the front because this is a sign of our emunah in the Geula, that this Laila, this night is Leil Shimurim, that it's Meshumer Mashmesh Novoi, that it's a night which is connected, the Mashiach will come. And says the Maharal, now I'm going to read inside because it's unbelievable. I think it's a hurrah for us, what we have to do for ourselves and for our children. The Maharal says that what is the inyan of opening up the door is that it is a time to be Mo'erer Rachamim and Rotzein Ha'elyon Aleinu, that the Oibershter should bring the Geula Shleima, and therefore Muchuyavim, we are obligated L'Haidia Levanenu Ulefarsem. We have to tell our children, and we have to be mefarsem to our families, the inyan of Mashiach, and that before Mashiach, Eliyahu Hanavi will come to be mevaser the Geula, and this is the Yisoid Emes Ve'ikar Gadol. And therefore he says, we open up the doorway for Eliyahu Hanavi, and we pour a kois lichvoidoi, a special kois of Yeshua and Geula. Hakol, all of this is kedei lefarsem bifnei bnei beisoi, to be mefarsem to our children, to our family members, and to tell them, to show them that the Geula Shleima is coming, that it's totally on the Bias Eliyahu Hanavi. And then he says, this is the punchline, that everything, kol davar misparsem, v'nishtaresh yoser be'enei haroyim, that when do you make an impact? When do you impress upon someone something? It's when it's not just words, it's not just with Amira, but that beyachad with the Amira, there's an Eze Inyan B'Poyel. And especially something which is a davar amafli, something which is that shocks people. That they see that Geula is not just words, but there's action. We know that the Rebbe said that the derech hayeshara to bring Mashiach is Inyan of Limud Geula Mashiach, and that should be the poem mamish of this Fabrengen, organized by Merkos, Suite 302, that we should have afterwards a hemshech in Limud of Inyan Geula Mashiach, and it's important that we do that with our families, that to share a vart in Inyan Geula Mashiach by the dinner table, by the breakfast table, and that our mishpachas see that Geula is a real thing. We make hachanos for the Geula. We know that there were great tzaddikim who bought special kapatas and clothes ready for Mashiach to come, packing suitcases ready for Mashiach to come. That all of the emunah that we have is not just words, it's not just dvarim, but there is a ma'aseh, it's something we live with. It's something which is real for us. That's the pshat. We said that if one person would scream out Masai with an emes, bevadai Mashiach would have come already. And then we have Tazriya Mitzayra limit in Yane Geula Mashiach. What's the connection? As Hainuhach, how are we able to come to a point where we scream out Masai with an emes? How are we able to have personal ownership of Mashiach that it pains me and it becomes my yearning and my aspiration and my life? Is the more we learn, the more we understand. We know that Torah affects a person, b'pnimius in them seichel and midos machshavah d'bramaisa. Then Mashiach becomes my own, and through that we can cry out ad masai with an emes. We should taka bizoicha that in the schus kodem kol of the Achdus, which again I can't say over. I looked at the flyer with all of the people speaking and all of the countries involved in the time zones. The Achdus itself is a gewaldige thing that we have to stop and think about. Yavoi Shila, Yavoi Begematria Echad is Achdus, Bichlal. And Befrat is Achdus in Reden wegen Mashiach, and Befrat with Achlotas Toivas, and Akol mitoich Shir Hamalos mitoich Simcha. That Simcha will taka be Peiretz, Kol Agdarim will break through the Choshech HaGolus, and this Fabrengen in the very next moment will become the Erste Fabrengen of the Geula, and the next speaker will be Melech HaMashiach Alein L'chaim V'Lebracha.